Man, I tell you what, I have never been a morning person, but I think I've been missing out on some good stuff. Hanging out here with like-minded individuals, enjoying a nice cup of joe, and of course, reading the newspaper for the day. Let's do it. Okay, fuck this, I need video games. The New York Times is a newspaper that I'm sure some people still read. Not everyone's caught up yet. I couldn't care less about the actual news aspect of this company, most people don't. But one thing's for sure, they have some pretty fun games on their website. Of course, Wordle is the big one that everyone got into at one point or another. The Crossword is a staple, and you've got the occasional Connections fan out there. But it kinda seems like not a lot of people acknowledge the other games that are floating around here. I mean, it's obviously because these games are basically designed to be played once a day, first thing in the morning before going to work and then immediately forgotten about, but I still think they're all worth a try. If you like one of these games, you'll probably like a few of the other ones too. So today, on this fine morning, I'm gonna go ahead and rank all the New York Times games that currently exist as of January 2025 to see which ones are the most fun and which ones struggle to be more entertaining than actually reading the fucking newspaper. So we might as well start this off with Wordle, possibly the most iconic game in here. In this game, you're given 6 attempts to guess the day's random 5-letter word. For each word you submit, the letter's tiles will change color to indicate how your guess compares to the real answer. Gray tiles indicate letters that don't appear in the real answer at all. Yellow tiles indicate letters that do appear in the word, just not in the spot you put them in. And green tiles indicate letters that appear in the real answer in the exact spot you put them in. If you can use the information your guesses give you to figure out the day's word before using up 6 attempts, you win. If not, you lose, and we'll have to wait till the next day to try again with a new word. Wordle's a pretty solid game, it's simple and can be a good bit of fun, but I gotta be honest, it's kinda lost its luster for me over time. It's not really as thinky as I once thought it was. It's really easy to get in the habit of starting the day's attempts with busted words like ratio or audio, words that instantly eliminate a bunch of vowels and other common letters. Once you've used a big enough variety of letters in your first couple of guesses, you can probably already get a general idea of what kind of word you're dealing with based on the tiles. At that point, it's just a matter of looking at the keyboard to see which letters you haven't used yet and just trying to cram them into your guesses to see how they fit into the day's word. And I can't tell you how many times I've ended up in a situation where I've got all but one letter figured out, there are a variety of words it could still be, and it's just completely random whether the letter I put in that last space ends up being the right one or not. Even if you figure out the best strategies to win this game, you can still end up in bullshit random situations like this. I'm alright with Wordle, there's a bit of strategy involved, and you do kinda have to know words to succeed consistently, but I don't know, the more I play this, the more I feel like it's just sort of a crapshoot half the time. But it is still one of the ones I return to every day. It can feel satisfying to guess the day's word, and I like the pressure of only having 6 attempts before you just lose for the day. It's not one of my favorites, but it is fun, and it's a classic for a reason. Now, did it deserve to have a board game made after it? Debatable. Did it deserve to have a game show based on it? Fuck no. But I'm gonna go ahead and add it to the ranking list, and as I cover the other games, they'll be placed above or below Wordle however I see fit. Don't get comfortable at number 1, Wordle. This won't last. Up next, let's look at the game that I consider to be Wordle's right-hand man, Connections. Back in my New York Times gaming phase, it was always Wordle and Connections. These were the 2 games I had to play every day. And honestly, I have Connections to thank for making me even the slightest bit interested in checking out the other games on this website. It's pretty freaking good. In Connections, you're given a list of 16 things, and it's your job to split them up into 4 groups, with each group containing 4 items that all have something in common with one another that none of the other ones share. For example, in this puzzle, we can identify these 4 words as being different types of playground equipment, so we'd select those, hit submit, and bam, we'd have just created one of our 4 groups. Now we gotta find out how to create 3 more groups out of the words we have left. The thing about this game is that the groups are almost never as obvious as that example. The color of each group indicates how tricky it is to figure out their category. Typically the yellow or green ones will come to you easily, but it can take some really out-of-the-box thinking to figure out how some of these random items belong together. You'll often find that certain words could have a multitude of things in common with other words, but there's only one correct solution to the puzzle, and you're only allowed 4 incorrect submissions before you lose for the day. The only hint you really get is if your submitted guess is one away from a correct grouping, which may be helpful for you, but I often find that it gives me more questions than answers. Like, okay, which of my selections doesn't belong here? Which of these other words is supposed to take its place? This game really makes you sit there and genuinely analyze all the double meanings of these words, visualize what they describe, and probably look up the definitions of words that you know the definition of, just in case there's some other stupid definition they're using for the puzzle. I really like this game. I'll admit, sometimes the categories they want you to figure out are kind of bullshit, especially when they're pop culture references I have no shot of knowing, but man, it is crazy satisfying to complete these puzzles. You really feel like a genius solving these things. You can't just get lucky here like you can in Wordle, you really have to earn the win, and I love it for that. I should also mention that they got a sports edition of Connections, and I don't give a shit about sports, and thus this edition of Connections, but hey, it's here if you want it. Would love to see a gamer's edition, please. Connections is great, and far better than Wordle ever was. Put it on top. Moving on to what is, as of this video, the latest addition to the New York Times saga, we've got Zorse, a word puzzle game sort of reminiscent of Wheel of Fortune. In Zorse, you're given a hangman-esque puzzle where the answer is always two common phrases mashed together, with one word being shared between the two. It's just like those Wheel of Fortune puzzles labeled before and after, where the last word used in the first phrase is the first word used in the second phrase. In this game, you're given a hint towards the puzzle solution at the top, and a couple of letters are automatically filled in for you. Using your hint, these letters, and your general knowledge of common phrases, it's your job to type in the exact solution to the day's puzzle, with only one chance to get it right. Before you do that though, you're given the chance to reveal the letters on up to 5 of the spaces on the board, and if you reveal a letter in one spot, all of that same letter will be revealed throughout the puzzle, adding a bit of strategy as to what spaces you may choose to reveal. Ultimately, if you successfully guess the mashup of phrases, you solve the puzzle and win for the day. Despite being the newest game yet, I gotta say, Zorse fits right in with the classics we just talked about. It makes you think, albeit not too hard, but I like that it limits your hints and that you only get one shot at entering your final guess, which means you really have to think it through and not just throw shit at the wall. I like it, it's a great addition to the game lineup, nice and simple. I don't think it's as great as Connections, not quite as thinky, but I think it tramples Wordle for what that's worth. Now let's take a look at a classic New York Times game that does everything but ass wrong. That game is Spelling Bee. I can't help but feel like I'm missing something here with this game. It feels like there's no way that this game actually is what I think it is, but I've seen no evidence that it is anything more, so here's how Spelling Bee works. Every day, you're given a new honeycomb-shaped puzzle containing 7 different letters. Using these 7 letters, you have to create as many words as possible, all of which must be 4 or more letters long, and must include the yellow letter in the center. You can use the same letter multiple times in a word if desired, just make as many words as you can. Longer words give more points, and there will always be at least one word that uses all the letters. Get a big score. This game feels so pointless. You just sit here spewing out as many words as you can think of using these letters until you eventually struggle to think of any more, and then I guess just stop for the day? Like, that's just it then? There's legitimately no incentive to sit there thinking of more words to enter. You're just given some letters, and you just keep making words out of them until you've had enough. Even if you wanted to get competitive about this and compare scores with your jackass coworkers or something, there's literally nothing stopping them from going, oh, you got a higher score than me, huh? Well, then I'm just gonna open the game again and think of some more words so my score surpasses yours. Like, there are no stakes. There is no reason to sit here and dig into the recesses of your brain thinking of words unless you actually want to make it your goal to find every possible word you can make with these letters for a maximum score, but I envision 0 alternate universes in which that passes for an entertaining time. You could strive to reach the genius rank every day by racking up enough points, but that honestly feels more like an arbitrary self-imposed goal rather than a win condition. It doesn't feel like the game actively expects you to go for it. And I gotta say, the fun of entering a bunch of words subsides really quickly when it becomes a grind to think of those random missing few you need to hit the point threshold. When it gets to a point where I'm sitting here aimlessly putting in random letter combinations just to try and quote-unquote win this thing for the day, I'm sorry, whether it's because I'm stupid or not, it's just not a fun time, I'm sorry. They had a chance to make this like Word Hunt from Game Pigeon, where the goal is to get the highest score possible in a set amount of time, and make it a competition against others who played that day, or really just put any definitive end goal in this game to make it feel like you have any reason to try at it. I don't know, Spelling Bee just feels freaking stupid to me. Worst one yet. Moving on to Letterboxd, a game that I initially liked a lot, then started realizing, don't really care. This one's kinda hard to explain, but basically every day there's a new box. Each side of the box contains 3 letters, and from inside the square, it's your job to use up all these letters by connecting them into words. For example, we may choose to start here with the letter C, where by connecting some of the other letters on other sides of the square, we can get the word calm. Since we ended on the letter M, that becomes the first letter of the next word, and we just keep going like that with the goal of using up each letter on the box. You can reuse letters all you want, and make really long words that use up a bunch of letters. The only real rule is that you can't use a letter that's on the same side as the one you're at. The game will tell you how many words you should strive to complete the puzzle in, although it will let you go beyond this amount if you so please. I originally thought this game was pretty good, and I still think the concept is pretty clever, but nowadays, this one's kind of a drag, not gonna lie. One thing I like about certain New York Times games is the strictness of the win conditions. Connections, you submit 4 wrong guesses, you lose. Wordle, you can guess 5 incorrect words to give yourself information, but your 6th guess has to be correct or you lose. Spelling Bee, no limits, no strictness, just do whatever you want. Yeah, and guess what? That game sucked, and it's the same thing here. This game isn't nearly as bad as Spelling Bee, but it definitely suffers from its open-endedness. I don't really like how there's a seemingly infinite number of solutions to each puzzle. You can start with any word you want, go down any path you decide to go down, and if at any point you feel like this path won't be a winner, you can just undo and try again. No stakes. You can also, like I said, exceed the recommended word goal and take 50 words to solve the puzzle, and the game will still celebrate you like you won. What fun is it to complete a puzzle like this if you're allowed to backtrack and retry an infinite amount of times, or complete it in way more steps than the game encourages you to. It makes winning feel super unsatisfying because, well, it's not like you cracked the solution or anything. I mean, there were an infinite number of ways to solve this thing. You just found one of them and had unlimited attempts to do so. Great job. Also, this guy did it in 72 words and got the same trophy you did for doing it in 4. You're all winners, congrats!
I did it.
Now don't get me wrong, when abiding by the optional word limit, the game can be a challenge to solve. Despite the open-endedness, it can take some serious time to find a solution, and for a game like this, giving the player a limited amount of attempts and forcing a loss on them if they do something wrong wouldn't really work. It makes sense for the game to be this way, but it makes it less enjoyable for me. It feels like trial and error with no real thought required. General rule for games to follow: if there are no stakes, no incentives to think and find the right solution to the day's puzzle in as few attempts as possible, the game probably won't fare well with me. So yeah, Letterboxd ranks relatively low on this list for now. It isn't faring well. Well, now it's time to get to the big one. It's the crossword. I guess the New York Times is famous for its crossword puzzles or something. They've been at it since 1942, and somewhere out there's a diehard fandom of people who solve this shit every day. Now, I'm not here to tell those people that their favorite and most popular New York Times game is horrible, but I fucking absolutely despise it to no end. I hate this thing. So the way a New York Times crossword puzzle works is there are dozens upon dozens of words, often over 100 of them. Each one has a description hinting at what the word is, and based on the descriptions, you have to fill the correct words in on the grid-based puzzle. The problem is, every word has letters that overlap with letters from other words on the board, so it becomes this nightmarish task of trying to figure out what exact words need to be used to get all the letters to line up correctly. And you know, that's whatever. That's what a crossword puzzle is. No big deal, right? Well, for me, it's a huge deal. Here's the thing. I am not a quarter as smart as this game needs you to be to solve these puzzles. When I think of crossword puzzles, I think of something like this. A very simple puzzle with around 20 words, where each word has just one or maybe two intersections with other words. The word descriptions are just challenging enough to make for a thought-provoking, yet still very completable puzzle. These are great, but then we go to the New York Times crossword, where it goes from 4th grade English class activity to fucking Einstein, Neil deGrasse Tyson, fucking Albert Einstein. In these puzzles, just about every single space on the board is an intersection. Every word overlaps with multiple other words. Look how daunting this is. I have to fill all of this out? What if I use the wrong word for one of these and don't realize it? Then every single one of these words becomes wrong too? Why are there over 100 words to solve? And like, look at these hints. They cover so many different subjects, spanning so many different time periods, niche topics, pop culture. The game wants you to be knowledgeable about way too many random things to be able to solve these puzzles. Most of the time, I find that I know nothing about most, if not all, the hints given for the day. I have no idea how anyone out there is able to complete these things every single day, just knowing all the shit they want you to know. Oftentimes, even if you do know a word that would fit the given hint, they're actually looking for a synonym of said word, or multiple words crammed into one long answer. That's always fun. And by default, if you don't use the correct word, the game won't tell you. Which means that, like I said, you could put the wrong thing in one line, then get all the surrounding answers wrong because you base those answers off of what you put in the line they intersect with. There is an option to make the game auto-check everything you put in, and this feels like an absolute must. I can't imagine playing this game without it. I've only ever solved one of these things without looking up any answers online, and don't get me wrong, that one was a pretty fun and satisfying time, but most other puzzles, I'd make very little progress in and then just give up. It's way too time consuming for my taste, taking like 20 to 30 minutes to complete a puzzle. If you're someone who's actually knowledgeable about all this stuff, I can imagine this being a fun thing to sit there and try to figure out. But man, I just can't do this, let alone every day. There are too many words to figure out, too many intersections, too much stuff I'm not knowledgeable about, and too much time required to complete a puzzle. Honestly, even if I was able to consistently know all this stuff to fill in the puzzle successfully, I don't think I would find it fun enough to commit this much time to it. It feels weird doing this because it's a fan favorite that I can see some value in, but it's not a game I ever care to revisit, and even if I do, I'm not likely to make any good progress. I just look at the day's puzzle and feel like giving up before I even start. The crossword currently sits at the bottom. I'm sorry. And now we have the mini. Shit, they're multiplying. The mini is just like the crossword, but I actually think this one's pretty fun. This game takes those horrid puzzles from the crossword and just makes them smaller. It maintains the same format of having every tile be an intersection between two words, but I think the smaller scale makes it way more appealing to work with. It inherently results in less words needing to be solved, and much shorter words at that. It's just way more digestible than the big crossword, and with this one, I can easily solve the daily puzzles with no auto check on, which is way more satisfying. And it's more enjoyable to be able to complete a puzzle quickly and not having to spend forever figuring everything out in one giant puzzle. It does still suck when there's something on the list of hints that you just don't know. It kind of just screws you out of solving the day's puzzle in most cases. At least with something like connections, these are usually just plain old words that typically don't require obscure knowledge about random subjects. But hey, these are supposed to be games for thinkers, and the mini does a great job giving us half brains and accessible thinking experience. Definitely a top tier entry. Up next, we've got Strands, which I'd consider to be another top tier entry. Strands is basically a word search without a word bank. Instead, you're given a hint about what the puzzle's theme is, and you have to find all the words in the puzzle that fit into that theme. One of the words in the puzzle, called the spanogram, will just straight up be the theme and stretch from one side of the board to the other. Unlike your typical word search, words don't have to be straight horizontal, vertical, or diagonal. They can take any shape they want. Words will never overlap, and every letter on the board will be used as part of a word. For every 3 incorrect words you submit, the game will give you a hint, highlighting the letters of one of the puzzle's correct words, which will allow you to fill in that word and give yourself a better idea of what the mystery theme is, which makes finding the other words a little easier if you're a bit stumped. As I said, I like this game. I think a word search type game is a perfect fit for the New York Times, and I feel like this was a great way to do it. It requires thought, but not too much thought. It's kinda low stakes, and I definitely prefer a game that has a possibility of failure involved, but this is still pretty fun, so it gets one of the higher spots. Alright, now for Vertex. This is one of the rare games that actually got removed from the New York Times library, and I can see why. This is a pretty suck-ass experience. Vertex isn't really a game, it's kinda just an activity. The way this works is there are a bunch of dots on the screen, and the number on each dot represents how many other dots it's supposed to be connected to. So you connect all the dots to make triangles, and once you've created all the correct triangles, a picture is revealed. And that's Vertex! This is a torturous experience. I'm pretty sure it's supposed to be relaxing or therapeutic or something, but it's honestly just irritating. If you create a triangle that wasn't supposed to be created, it makes you manually unconnect those dots, and you just have to keep trying and trying and trying until you finally create the triangles the game wants you to create. What is the point? Why am I drawing these triangles? Why should I care about seeing the final image? Legitimately, all you're doing in this game is slowly creating a polygonal image by connecting dots into triangles. That's all this is. This isn't a fun activity, it's just fucking guess and check. It feels like a chore. Fucking low ass spot on the list. Screw Vertex. Next up we have tiles, and this is another shitty one. The game gives you this grid made up of a bunch of tiles featuring all these crazy shapes and designs on them. You click on one of the tiles, and then you gotta find another tile that shares one of the same features as the one you clicked. So then you click on that one, and whatever features those tiles shared are now removed from both of them. Now you have to find another tile that shares a feature with the tile you just picked, and then that feature will be removed from both of those tiles, so on and so forth. Keep going until you've completely sucked the life out of every tile on the board. There's not really a goal to this one. You can't really lose or anything. You've got infinite time to hunt down tiles with matching design elements, and even if you do click a tile that has nothing in common with your selected tile, nothing happens. You can just keep going until you find something that works. I guess you lose your combo if you click something you weren't supposed to, but like, who cares? It's got a bunch of different themes, which is sorta cool. Some of these can be pretty tricky, but no matter the theme, this is just mindless and boring. Who gives a f? Also, this game weirdly has 2 modes, the normal mode and a Zen mode that you have to pay for. All it does is make the tiles respawn after you clear them, turning this into an awesome endless experience. Yes! Tiles isn't good, man. Put it low. Now here's another game that was discontinued, Digits. Unlike Vertex's bitch ass, I actually got a bit of enjoyment out of this one. Kinda sucks that damn tiles outlived it. Digits is a math game that asks you to create the number shown using the 6 numbers you're given down here. You can use any combination of addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division between these numbers to eventually reach the goal number, but once a number is used for one of these functions, you can't use it again. If you multiply 2 numbers by each other, for example, both numbers disappear and effectively become their product. Now you just have that number and the other remaining ones to work with. You don't really have limited attempts. You can kind of just retry and undo as many things as you want. And honestly, for this game, I think that makes sense. This game would be way too hard to consistently win if you weren't allowed to undo. Really, the difficulty is this game's biggest issue, and is likely the reason it was removed. The general population does not like math. I think it's a fun concept, and definitely satisfying to win, but oftentimes it just ends up being a big-ass game of guess and check, trying all the different combinations of numbers and math functions until you squirm your way to the goal number. I bet math lovers would get a kick out of this game, and can probably think fourth-dimensionally enough to crack these puzzles at the same rate as the average person can crack a Wordle, but for me, I don't know, I don't have good enough forethought to get myself from start to finish with these puzzles. It's just too smart for me. I like it, but I wouldn't save it from a burning building. Following up with another number game, it's Sudoku, and by Sudoku, yes, I do mean just Sudoku. It's just Sudoku. If you don't know how Sudoku works, basically you're given this large 9x9 grid of numbers split into smaller 3x3 grids of numbers. Your job is to fill the board with numbers in such a way that ensures that each row, column, and mini 3x3 grid contains exactly one of each number from 1 to 9. If at any point there's a row with multiple 3s, a column with multiple 6s, a mini 3x3 grid with multiple 1s, etc., you'll have to remove the duplicate and find somewhere else to put it so that every square can be filled in a way that satisfies these conditions. You're only given a few pre-filled boxes per game, and the harder the difficulty you're playing on, the less you'll get. This is an incredibly casual game that is in no way exclusive to the New York Times. It can be pretty satisfying to solve a puzzle, but it's also very low stakes. The game will tell you when there's a repeated number conflict, so you can get through the puzzles pretty easily without much deep thought. The game's alright, every puzzle feels the exact same, and it isn't that fun, but I mean, it is Sudoku. They did Sudoku correctly, that's for sure. Like, this is unmistakably Sudoku. Good job on that, but Yeah, this is very average. So those were all the games as of now that have been available on the New York Times Games website, but there is one sneaky little outlier I decided to throw in here, something that is technically a New York Times game and thus deserves a spot on this ranking list, the New York Times Crosswords for Nintendo DS. Okay, people care about this, I guess. Awesome. The New York Times Crosswords released on the DS in 2007. It is like the definition of a retirement home video game. We all know and love that genre of games the DS was known for supplying. Simple-ass games that weren't really games, designed to be played by senior citizens who didn't know who Luigi was. I think to get the most authentic opinion possible on this game, I gotta find an old guy to play this for me so I can observe his reaction. Hey, old guy, play this. What the fuck? Okay, I guess I'll take this one over then. The New York Times Crosswords for the DS is the same overly complicated who knows this shit crossword gameplay I despise on the website, but somehow even worse. The puzzles are still formatted with all these overlapping words, and now you have to painstakingly navigate the puzzle while it's all zoomed in and impossible to perceive. It still requires you to be knowledgeable on a bunch of random shit, but since this game is from 2007, a lot of these things are going to be outdated or just irrelevant beyond belief. And should you actually know the answer to one of these hints, you can't just type the word into the boxes with the keyboard, you have to manually draw each individual letter with the stylus in this box, which by the way, sucks ass at detecting the letter you're trying to write. Also, you don't get a complete list of all the hints on the puzzle, you can only see the hint for the one word you have selected, so great. There's also no auto checker like there is on the website, which again is something I 100% need. The only help you do get is the option to fill in individual boxes of your choosing, which is something, but not much. The visuals and music are depressing, kinda nostalgic, definitely great old people material, but still, the music and visuals of this game make me want to cry, it's miserable. So pretty much, this game is just a collection of New York Times crossword puzzles. Probably should have seen that coming. The game pretends to have multiple modes, which you can access through this atrocious menu that tries to be cute by being presented as a crossword puzzle, but ends up being a nightmare to navigate as a result. The modes in question are Quick Puzzle, Puzzle Week, and Challenge Mode. They're all just crossword puzzles. And there's also local co-op and versus modes, where you and up to 3 others can play on the same board and see what everyone's doing on it. You can all work together to solve the same puzzle, or make it a friendly competition.
I'm solving this puzzle.
You're gonna lose this thing, bud. At the end of the day, this is the crosswords game I don't like from the website, made worse in a variety of ways. I hate this thing. Bottom spot. And there you have it, my final ranking of the New York Times games as of January 2025. Now, I've said some unsavory things about a few of these games, but the truth is, none of them are definitively bad. I can't for the life of me get into the crossword or these other lower ranked games, but that's just because they're not for me. I can definitely see the appeal in a majority of these games. All in all, it's a very solid collection of little activities. But none of these games hold a candle to the game concept I've been developing. Fart on Grandma, the cutting edge of puzzle gaming. In Fart on Grandma, you gotta choose the correct number to fart down that'll lead it to suffocating Grandma, while taking into account all the obstacles on the board and their functions. You can only make one selection, and if it's wrong, you lose for the day. Now, I've already created a handful of puzzles for this game, and submitted them to the New York Times so they can turn this into a daily game just like Wordle and Friends. Let me actually check and see if they responded to my email. Shit, I'm blacklisted from the state of New York now.